It was a quiet morning in a small town. The streets were almost empty, and the sun had just started to rise. Birds were singing softly, and the world seemed peaceful. But inside a small local bank, something unexpected was about to happen. An old woman named Martha slowly walked toward the bank's glass doors. Her hands trembled as she held a small brown purse close to her chest. She was wearing a faded blue coat and old shoes that made a soft sound on the floor. Her face showed kindness, but her eyes were tired, full of stories no one had asked to hear. She opened the door carefully and walked inside. The air inside the bank was cold, and people were rushing in and out. The staff were busy, tapping on computers, talking loudly, and counting money. Martha quietly stood in line, waiting for her turn. She looked around. No one smiled back at her. People gave her quick looks, then turned away. To them, she was just another old lady, slow and out of place. But only Martha knew why she had come there that day. Something very important was at stake. When it was finally her turn, she stepped up to the counter. Behind it was a young bank clerk named Jessica, who seemed tired and annoyed. "Yes, ma'am." "What do you need today?" Jessica asked without looking up from her computer. Martha spoke softly. I came to withdraw some money from my account. I need to pay for my rent." Jessica typed a few keys, then frowned. "It says your account is frozen. You can't take any money right now," Martha blinked. "Frozen? But I don't understand. I need that money. Please, can you check again?" Jessica sighed, louder this time. "Ma'am, I already checked. You'll have to come back later." Next, Martha felt a wave of panic. "Please, miss. I don't have anywhere else to go. My landlord," he said. "He'll throw me out if I don't pay today." People in line began to stare. Some whispered. Jessica crossed her arms. "Ma'am, you're holding up the line. Please step aside." Martha's voice cracked. "I've been a customer here for 40 years. I just need my own money." The bank manager, Mr. Dale, heard the commotion and walked over. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply. Jessica pointed at Martha. "She's refusing to leave, sir. Her account is frozen." Mr. Dale looked Martha up and down with cold eyes. "Ma'am, we can't help you if your account is restricted. You'll need to contact the main branch." "But sir," Martha pleaded, "I don't have a phone. I don't have a car. Please, I just need a little money for rent." The manager's face hardened. "Security," he said into his walkie-talkie. "We have a disturbance at counter 3. Two guards approached quickly. Martha's heart raced. "Please," she whispered, tears forming. "You don't understand." The guards took her gently but firmly by the arms. "Come on, ma'am," one said. "You have to leave." She struggled for a moment, then gave up. Her purse slipped from her hands and fell open on the floor. A few coins rolled away, and everyone watched in silence. No one helped her pick them up. She bent down slowly. Hands shaking, gathered her things, and looked one last time at the people inside. One day she said softly, "You'll understand what kindness means." Then she turned and walked out of the bank. The glass doors closed behind her, and for a moment, everything went silent again. Outside, the cold wind hit her face. She sat down on a bench near the sidewalk, feeling defeated and invisible. People passed by, busy with their own lives. No one stopped. No one cared. But across the street, someone was watching. A tall man in sunglasses, wearing a simple hoodie, had seen everything. He leaned on his car and shook his head slowly. It was Shaquille O'Neal, the former NBA star, but today, he wasn't here as a celebrity. He was here as a man who believed in kindness. And what he just saw made his blood boil. Shaq took off his glasses, looked at the bank sign, and said under his breath, "They messed with the wrong person." Shaquille O'Neal stood across the street, his tall figure easy to notice even in the crowd. He had just stopped for a quick coffee on his way to a charity event. But what he saw from the cafe window froze him in place. An elderly woman being pushed out of a bank, two guards holding her arms as if she was some kind of troublemaker, her small purse falling to the ground, coins rolling everywhere. Shaz followed her as she sat on the bench outside, shaking and alone. Something about her face reminded him of his own mother, strong, proud, and gentle. He could almost hear his mom's voice in his head. If you see someone hurting, you don't walk away, son. You step in. He took a deep breath, left his coffee on the table, and walked across the street. As Shaq approached, people turned their heads. It wasn't every day that a 7-foot-tall man appeared in front of the local bank. Martha looked up, startled. "Ma'am," Shaq said softly, lowering his voice. "Are you okay?" She blinked at him, not recognizing him at first. "Oh, I'm fine, son. Just a bad day." Shaq sat beside her, careful not to make her feel small. "I saw what happened in there. That didn't look fine to me." Martha gave a weak smile. "They said my account was frozen. I don't understand why. I just needed my rent money. But maybe it's my time to learn to let go." Shaq shook his head. "No, ma'am. Nobody deserves to be treated like that, especially not someone your age." He stood up suddenly. "Wait here, okay? I'll be right back." Martha tried to stop him. "No, please don't cause trouble." But he was already walking toward the bank doors inside. The staff were still whispering about what had happened. Jessica, the clerk, was laughing quietly with another worker. "Can you believe that old lady? Acting like we stole her money." The laughter stopped when the doors swung open. Shaq stepped in, filling the room with his presence. His calm face showed no anger, but his eyes were sharp, focused. The manager, Mr. Dale, looked up. Sir, can I help you?" "Yes," Shaq said in a deep, steady voice. "You can start by explaining why you threw that elderly woman out." Mr. Dale blinked. "Excuse me." "I saw everything," Shaq continued. "That woman's been your customer for decades, and you treated her like trash. You didn't even try to help." Jessica crossed her arms. "Sir, this is none of your business." Shaq looked directly at her. "When someone's being mistreated, it becomes everyone's business."
Oh.
The room went silent. People who were waiting in line stopped pretending to be on their phones. Even the guards looked nervous. Mr. Dale tried to sound firm. "Sir, if you're here to make a scene..." Shaq stepped closer, his voice calm, but heavy with authority. "I'm here to make things right." You froze her account without notice, then humiliated her in front of everyone. Is that how your bank works? Jessica looked down, biting her lip. Mr. Dale hesitated, then tried to regain control. "Look, we were just following policy. Policy doesn't excuse cruelty," Shaq interrupted. "You could have shown compassion. You could have explained things gently. Instead, you embarrassed her." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "You know who that woman reminds me of? My mother. And if someone treated her like that, I wouldn't be standing here calmly." Mr. Dale swallowed hard. "Sir, I can look into it again." Shaq nodded slowly. "Good idea. Let's do that." He walked to the counter and said, "Unfreeze her account. Now." Jessica quickly turned to her computer. Her fingers trembled as she typed. A few moments later, she said, It's active again, sir." Shaq smiled faintly. "That's better." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it on the counter. "And this," he said, "is for her rent, and for anyone else who's been treated unfairly here." People started whispering again, this time with admiration. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, "That's Shaq. Shaquille O'Neal." Shaq turned to the guards in the crowd. "Kindness costs nothing," he said, "but it changes everything." Then he walked out of the bank, his shadow long on the marble floor. Outside, Martha was still sitting on the bench. When she saw him coming, she stood up nervously. "Ma'am," he said gently, handing her the envelope. "Your account's fixed, and you don't have to worry about rent anymore."
Oh.
Tears filled Martha's eyes. "I don't know what to say." Shaq smiled warmly. "Just promise me something when you see someone in need. You'll help them too." Martha nodded, holding his hand tightly. For the first time that day, she felt seen and not alone. The next morning, the sun rose over the small town like nothing had happened. But inside that same bank, the atmosphere was different, nervous and tense. People were whispering in corners. Phones buzzed with notifications. Something big was happening online. Jessica, the young bank clerk, stared at her phone in shock. A video was spreading like wildfire. The title read, "Shaq defends elderly woman thrown out of bank. What happens next will shock you." The clip showed everything: the guards escorting Martha out, her purse falling, and Shaq's dramatic entrance. Someone in the bank lobby had recorded it all. The video had over 2 million views in just 12 hours. Comments flooded in: "Shaq is a hero. That bank should be ashamed. How could anyone treat an old woman like that?" Jessica's face turned pale. Her name wasn't mentioned, but everyone in town knew she worked there. She felt her stomach twist. Mr. Dale, the manager, stormed out of his office holding his phone. "Who filmed this?" he shouted, slamming the door. Nobody answered. Everyone pretended to look busy. Meanwhile, Martha sat quietly in her small apartment. The sunlight shone through her thin curtains as she sipped tea. She still couldn't believe what had happened. On her small television, the news played the same story. Shaquille O'Neal helps local senior after bank incident. The reporter spoke kindly about her. 72 Martha Green never expected help from a global icon. Thanks to Shaquille O'Neal, her story is reminding people around the world that kindness still matters. Martha smiled weakly. It felt strange. All her life she'd been invisible, and now the world suddenly saw her. She looked at the envelope Shaq had given her the day before. It wasn't just filled with money. There was also a handwritten note. "You are loved. Don't lose hope. The world needs more people like you." Shaq tears rolled down her cheeks. For years, she had struggled alone after her husband passed. After her children moved away, after the world seemed to forget her. But that day, a stranger had given her something she thought was gone forever: dignity. Across town, the bank's headquarters called an emergency meeting. The regional director appeared on a video screen, her voice sharp. "Mr. Dale, this incident has gone viral. It's damaging our reputation. What are you going to do about it?" Mr. Dale wiped sweat from his forehead. "We're handling it. The account issue was a misunderstanding." The director's eyes narrowed. "A misunderstanding doesn't look like 2 guards dragging a grandmother out of the bank. Fix this, or I'll find someone who can." After the call ended, he turned to Jessica. You were the one dealing with her. Do you realize what you've done?" Jessica's voice trembled. "I was just following the rules." "Rules?" Mr. Dale snapped. "Rules don't make us human. You forgot that?" Jessica looked down. For the first time, guilt hit her harder than fear. She remembered the look in Martha's eyes, the helplessness, the sadness. She had treated her like she didn't matter, and now the whole world knew it. Later that evening, Shaq was sitting in his car outside a children's center where he often volunteered. Reporters had been trying to contact him all day, but he didn't care about interviews. He just wanted to make sure Martha was okay. He dialed a number and spoke softly. "Hi, Mrs. Green. It's Shaq. Just checking in. You holding up all right?" Martha's voice was gentle. "Oh yes, dear. You did more for me than you'll ever know. The whole town is talking about you." "Hey," Shaq chuckled. "I'm not the hero, ma'am." "You are? You reminded everyone what real strength looks like." There was a pause. "You know," she said, "for years, I thought I was invisible. But maybe God sent you that day to remind me I'm not." Shaq smiled. "Maybe he sent you to remind the world what kindness really means." By nightfall, the story had reached national headlines. The bank released an official apology and announced they'd donate $50,000 to senior care programs in Martha's name. But for Martha and Shaq, it wasn't about money or fame. It was about something deeper, a simple act of standing up for what's right. As the stars shone above the quiet town, Martha looked out her window, whispering a prayer of thanks. She didn't know it yet, but her story was far from over. The world was watching, and more surprises were on the way. The next few days felt like a dream for Martha. Her quiet life had suddenly become a whirlwind of attention. Reporters knocked on her door. Neighbors she hadn't seen in years came to visit. And her phone, a small, old flip phone, kept ringing with calls from unknown numbers. Everywhere she went, people smiled at her. "You're Martha, right? The lady from the Shaq story," they'd say. She'd blush and nod, still surprised that the world cared. At first it was overwhelming. She wasn't used to the spotlight. But slowly, she realized something beautiful. Her story wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been ignored, mistreated, or made to feel small. Meanwhile, across town, Shaq sat in a cafe with his manager, Tony. His phone buzzed nonstop with media requests. Shaq, CNN wants an interview. Then there's Good Morning America, and a few podcasts too, Tony said, scrolling through messages. Shaq sighed. Man, I didn't do it for attention. I just couldn't stand there and do nothing. Tony smiled. I know, but you've started something big. People are talking about kindness again. They're calling it the Shaq effect. Shaq laughed softly. The Shaq effect, huh? Nah, it's the Martha effect. She's the real star. He looked out the window thoughtfully. You know what? Let's do something with this energy. Something that helps more people like her. Tony raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like a fund, Shaq said. A fund that helps seniors pay bills, fix homes, or just feel cared for. Let's call it Martha's Hands, because she's the reason this all started. But in a week, Shaq's idea turned into action. A video of him talking about the project went viral. He said sometimes all someone needs is a helping hand. Martha reminded me that kindness doesn't have an age limit. So we're building something in her name to make sure no one gets left behind again. Donations poured in from around the country. Some people gave $5, others gave thousands. A little boy sent a letter saying, I helped my grandma open a bank account today. Because of Martha. Martha cried when she saw that letter. Oh, Shaq, she whispered. Look what you've started. But not everyone was happy. At the same bank, tension grew heavier each day. Mr. Dale and Jessica faced constant criticism. People canceled their accounts. Protesters stood outside holding signs that said, respect the elderly and kindness first. Mr. Dale's boss called again. You've become the face of this scandal, Dale. Step down before we make it official. He hung up without answering. For the first time in years, he felt something strange. Guilt. Real guilt. That night, he sat in his office alone, staring at a photo of his own mother on his desk. She had passed away years ago. He remembered how gentle she was, how she always said, treat people with care, no matter who they are. A single tear rolled down his cheek. I failed her, he whispered. The next morning, Mr. Dale made a decision. He walked to Martha's apartment himself. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. Mr. Dale, what are you doing here? He took off his hat humbly. Ma'am, I came to apologize. I can't undo what happened, but I want to make it right. Martha's heart softened. She could see the sincerity in his eyes. You made a mistake, she said gently. But mistakes can become lessons if we're brave enough to face them. He nodded slowly. I've already resigned from the bank. I'm joining the Martha's Hands program instead. Maybe I can do some good for once. Martha smiled, touched. Then I forgive you. Later that evening, Shaq received a call from Martha. Guess who came to visit me today, she said. When she told him, Shaq smiled proudly. See, that's what I mean, Martha. Kindness doesn't just help one person, it spreads. He looked at the growing list of donations on his laptop. Thousands of names. Thousands of hearts awakened. Shaq leaned back and whispered to himself, the world's not as broken as it looks. Sometimes it just needs a reminder. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars, each one a spark of hope. And somewhere in that quiet night, Martha whispered a prayer for everyone still waiting to be seen. Days turned into weeks, and Martha's hands kept growing. Donations came from schools, churches, even celebrities. News anchors called it a movement of compassion. Shaq couldn't believe how fast it was spreading. What started as one small act had become a nationwide wave of kindness. But the bigger it grew, the more challenges began to appear. One morning, Shaq was in his office with Tony, going through emails. Tony frowned. Shaq, look at this. Some people are posting online saying Martha's Hands is fake. They think it's a PR stunt. Shaq raised his eyebrows. A PR stunt. Man, we've already helped hundreds of seniors. Tony nodded. I know, but people on the internet don't always believe what they see. There's even a blogger saying, "We made up Martha's story." Shaq leaned back in his chair. "So they're calling Martha a liar?" His voice grew low, almost dangerous. Tony hesitated. "Yeah, they're saying she's an actress. That this whole thing was planned." Shaq stood up slowly. "All right. Then we show them the truth." Across town, Martha sat by her window, reading a letter from a little girl named Lily. "Dear Martha," cried when she saw your story. She said she doesn't feel invisible anymore. "Thank you." The letter made her smile, but her joy was cut short when her neighbor rushed in holding a tablet. "Martha, look at this. People online are saying you're an actress, that you were paid to fake it." Martha froze. Her heart sank. "Why would anyone think that?" "I don't know," her neighbor said softly. "The internet can be cruel." Martha closed her eyes, tears forming. "I didn't want any fame. I just wanted to pay my rent." She looked at the letter in her lap. Lily's words blurred through her tears. "Maybe I should have stayed quiet," she whispered. Later that day, Shaq visited her apartment. She opened the door slowly, looking tired. He smiled gently. "Hey, superstar. What's going on?" Martha sighed. "Shaq, people are saying awful things about us. Maybe it's better to stop all this." Shaq shook his head. "No, ma'am. You started something real. Don't let lies take that away."
Ow!
"But what if they never believe us?" she asked. Then, Shaq said firmly, "We let the truth speak louder than the noise." He pulled out his phone. "I'm setting up a live interview. You and me. No fancy studio. Just us. Real people. Real story." Martha hesitated, but she trusted him. "All right," she said softly. The next day, the live stream began. Shaq sat beside Martha on her small couch, surrounded by her potted plants and family photos. Over 1 million people tuned in. Shaq looked into the camera. "I don't need to prove anything for myself," he said. "But I won't let anyone disrespect this lady." He turned to Martha. "Tell them what really happened, ma'am." Her voice trembled at first. "I went to the bank that morning because I couldn't pay my rent. They told me my account was frozen, and I was scared. I begged them to help, but they threw me out." She paused, her hands shaking slightly. Then this kind man showed up. He didn't know me, but he stood up for me. I didn't even know who he was at first. I just knew he cared. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't fake anything. I'm not an actress. I'm just someone who got help when she needed it most." Shaq nodded. "You heard her, folks. This isn't about fame. It's about doing the right thing even when no one's watching." The comments section exploded with support. "We believe you, Martha. Never stop being kind." Respect to Shaq for standing by her. By the end of the live stream, over $500,000 had been donated to Martha's hands. Martha looked at Shaq, her eyes shining. "They believed us." Shaq smiled. "Of course they did. Truth always wins. It just takes courage to tell it." That night, as she sat alone, Martha whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible anymore. And far away, in homes across the country, strangers held their loved ones tighter, reminded that kindness could still change the world. But little did they know, another twist was waiting, one that would test their kindness like never before. Months had passed since the day Shaq stood up for Martha. The world had moved on to new stories, but Martha's hands was still alive, stronger than ever. Thousands of elderly people had been helped. Volunteers worked in small towns, fixing roofs, paying bills, and bringing groceries to lonely seniors. Yet behind the success, Shaq and Martha both knew kindness wasn't a trend. It was a fight that had to be protected. One cold morning, Martha woke up to a knock on her door. She opened it slowly, expecting another reporter. But instead, there stood a young woman holding a bouquet of white roses. "Martha Green?" she asked softly. "Yes, dear. Can I help you?" The woman smiled nervously. "You don't know me, but my name is Jessica. I used to work at that bank." Martha froze for a moment. "Oh," she said gently. "You're the young lady from that day." Jessica nodded, her eyes full of shame. "Yes, I came to say sorry, properly this time. I've thought about that day every night. You didn't deserve what I did." Martha's eyes softened. "Come in, dear." Jessica stepped inside, tears in her eyes. "After what happened, I lost my job. But honestly, I think I gained something more important. A heart. I started volunteering for Martha's Hands, helping people like you. It's changed me." Martha smiled kindly. "That's the beauty of mistakes, Jessica. They can break us, or they can make us better." Jessica handed her the flowers. "Thank you for forgiving me. I wanted you to have these." Martha took them, her hands trembling slightly. "Forgiveness isn't a gift we give others," she said. "It's the gift we give ourselves." Meanwhile, Shaq was in another city for a charity event. He walked onto the stage, the crowd cheering loudly, but today his voice was different, softer, more serious. "I've met many people in my life," he began, "but one old lady changed how I see the world. Martha reminded me that sometimes one small act of courage can wake up millions of hearts." He paused, looking around the hall. "But don't just clap. Go home and do something. Help a neighbor. Feed someone hungry. Make someone feel seen. Because kindness means nothing until it moves." The audience stood up, clapping not just for Shaq but for Martha, for the message, for hope itself. That night, as Shaq drove home, he received a call. It was Tony. "Shaq, it's Martha." Shaq's grip tightened on the wheel. "What happened?" "She's in the hospital. She fainted this evening. They said she's stable, but weak." Without a second thought, Shaq turned his car around and drove through the night. When he arrived, Martha was resting in a hospital bed, pale but smiling faintly. "Hey, big man," she whispered as he walked in. "Didn't I tell you not to worry so much?" Shaq sat beside her, holding her hand gently. "You scared me, ma'am." She smiled softly. "Don't be. I'm old. Sometimes the body gets tired, but the heart." She touched her chest lightly. "The heart's still strong." Shaq nodded, eyes wet. "You've built something beautiful, Martha. You've changed more lives than you'll ever know." She looked out the window at the soft city lights. "No, Shaq, we did it. And promise me something, don't stop. Keep spreading the kindness. Keep fighting for the ones no one sees." He squeezed her hand. "I promise." A few days later, Martha peacefully passed away in her sleep. The world mourned, but her legacy burned brighter than ever. Shaq held a memorial event in her honor. Thousands came, carrying candles, sharing stories of how Martha's hands had touched their lives. On stage, Shaq spoke with emotion. "She may be gone, but she's still here in every act of kindness, in every helping hand, in every heart she touched." He pointed toward the sky. "That's not goodbye. That's thank you." Years later, a bronze statue stood outside that same bank, an elderly woman sitting on a bench, holding a small purse. The plaque read, "Martha Green, proof that one kind heart can change the world." And every day, people passing by would stop for a moment, smile, and remember that kindness never dies, it only grows.